So let's take a look at selecting objects in Blender. We already learned a little bit about selecting objects by clicking on them in the outliner. So if I have to click on an object here, you can see how I can select them. But we can also select objects in the viewport, and we do that by right-clicking. So if I were to position my mouse over this cube and right-click on it, you would see that it highlights and that tells me it's selected. If I look in the outliner, you will also see a little circle here that tells me it's selected as well. If I were to right-click over another object, say this object, it would highlight. And I can do this for any object. So if I wanted to select one object at a time, right-click is all I need. If I want to select multiple objects, then I have to hold down the Shift key and right-click. So if I have this cube selected and I hold down the Shift key and select the object, you will notice how the object highlights. So I have two objects selected. But also notice how the highlight around the cube turned dark. And this is just a little bit of information that tells me that the object is the last object that I have selected. So if I were to hold down the Shift key and select the objects, you can see how that highlight follows you around. So this way you can the last object that you've selected. And this can be important for certain operations such as booleans that require you to select objects in a certain order. If I want to deselect objects, I can again hold down the Shift key and just click on the object. If the object is highlighted with a dark color, you have to click twice. So if I hold down the Shift key and click here, notice how the first click turns it light, then the second click completely deselects, and we can do that for all of these. Another way to select objects is to simply select everything in the scene. And we can do this using the letter A. So if I hit the A key, it selects everything in the scene, including cameras and lights. But what's really cool is if I hit the A key again, it deselects everything in the key. So this is a really nice toggle to select everything or to deselect everything. And this even works if I have just a few items selected. So I were just to select 3 items, I can deselect them just by hitting A. There are a couple of other ways to select objects within Blender. And a lot of these are in the Select menu. And the two most important are Border and Circle Select. What's really cool is that these are labeled A for Select All, B for Border Select, and C for Circle Select. So you can just remember it by A, B, C. So we've already covered A, which is Select All. Let's go ahead and look at B, which is Border Select. If I hit the B key, notice how these crosshairs come up. All I have to do is left click and drag, and you can see I can draw a selection box. If I let go, anything within that box is selected. If I were to do this again, hit the B key and select, for example, this object, it would just add to the existing selection. So I don't deselect the old objects, I just add to my existing selection. I have to hit the A key to deselect. Also with Border Select is that anything within that border gets selected. So if I were to border select and just the top corner of this cube, the cube would still be selected, even though it wasn't completely within that border. Another tool that we can use is the Circle Select tool. And that is the hotkey of C. Remember A, B, C. So if I hit C, notice how this little circle comes up and I can just start clicking on individual objects and just selecting multiple objects. To cancel this mode, either hit the Escape key or just right-click out of it. One of the nice things about this Circle Select tool is that you can increase or decrease the size of the circle. So I am going to hit the C key again, and if you have a mouse with a middle mouse button, you can just hold that mouse button to size it. If you don't have a middle mouse button, the plus and minus keys on your keypad will also size it. So if I were to size this fairly big, then get a couple of objects within it, I can select multiple objects just by making sure that they fall within that circle. And again, right-clicking gets you out of this mode. In addition to these tools, there is a couple of rather really handy tools. Couple of them here are Random, which just selects a random number of objects. So if I were to hit Random again, it will just select a random number of things in the scene, which can be handy. But another one is Inverse. So if I hit Ctrl I or hit the Inverse menu option, it'll select everything that wasn't selected. One more that I want to show you is called Select Pattern. But before I do that, remember every object in Blender has a name. And in this case we have names, very simple names. But we can use those as criteria for a selection. So if we're to go select pattern and type in for the pattern cube, we'd select the cube. If I were to select pattern and just type C with the asterisk, it would select anything starting with the letter C. And in this case that would be the camera, the different object. So those are some of the basic tools for selecting objects within Blender. So go ahead and practice with selection. It's really fairly straightforward and you should get the hang of it fairly quickly.